Hello and good morning. I'm here with a new friend of mine, Mark Webber. He's a chap that I met a couple of weeks ago, and always smashing to meet someone that is interested in crypto. And we had a little chat, but time ran out, so I thought, do you know what? Let's kill two birds with one stone. Let's get him on the show. Let's have a little chat in more depth about crypto, and because we're quite a rare species, aren't we, Mark?
We are, man. Yes. Good morning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your background, and then maybe we'll get into sort of how on earth you stumbled into crypto. We all have funny stories, I think, really. But yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we'll get stuck in.
Yeah. All right. Cheers, then. So, yeah. So, obviously, I'm a Gen Xer, as you can probably see. And basically, I have a bit of a technical background. I worked in corporate for a long time. I worked in IBM and had numerous technical roles. This required sort of continuous training when I was in the company. And I had to do training on things like blockchain, as well as, cloud computing and other things. And so, but I was always interested to the technical, side of things. And I was able to kind of learn that, certain large companies were working with, certain projects, crypto projects, and other companies.
What sort of time period was that, Mark? Sorry, just to sort of put it into, because Bitcoin's been around since sort of 2009, so quite a while. But what sort of period were you working on? I'd just be interested to know when IBM was working on blockchain stuff. So, because it's all quite new to me within the last sort of 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, I have to stress that from my perspective, I wasn't working, with blockchain in, in what I was doing, but we had to have sort of industry specific knowledge, so that if someone like a client was to be able to speak to someone about something, that they had a kind of broad range of knowledge on topics rather than looking completely vague about something. That makes sense?
Yeah, totally.
Apart from obviously what you were a sort of specialist in. And you're going back to 2019 for me. So I'm not lucky enough to be one of those, 2009 people.
Oh, wouldn't we all love that? Wouldn't we all love that?
Yeah. It was 2019, and yeah. So obviously I was in did some blockchain training. It was only basic training. It wasn't like I was some kind of engineer or anything like that. It was just for the knowledge of what it's about. And but it did interest me a lot. Obviously, I'd heard of Bitcoin and sort of obviously that was obviously the main crypto. But this was more, I became aware obviously that different companies were working with different projects. So for example, Stellar Lumens. In terms of payments, and Hedera Hashgraph in terms of almost like a governance council of different companies that were involved in it and had an interest in it. So that kind of interested me. But at the same time, one of the things that kind of tilted me to this area was the fact that I also had exposure to younger people who almost like teenagers, in sort of family circles who, and I remember being at a dinner where one of them said to the other that if, someone did something for them, they would give them some Bitcoin, almost in kind of like a jokingly sort of way.
Right.
And it kind of created like, okay, you've got this business bit here that you've got this interested in, and then you've got young people who are obviously, more with it and cool or what have you over here kind of talking about it. And it kind of just generates an interest from there, if that makes sense. And so I can remember literally, signing up on a platform with the idea that, okay, well, I'm just going to try and, sort of buy a little bit of this, buy into a little bit of it. Yeah, like a tiny bit, just to see what it's all about and how it works. And I remember taking the dog out for a walk on over a field, and this is after I've put myself on a platform, and literally I must have bought £20 worth of Bitcoin,
Yeah.
or something like that. And then, and obviously that just sort of, I think when you actually sort of step into it and, you know, do a small investment, you become kind of more interested then. It's a bit like buy shares, you know, you start sort of checking, is it up, is it down?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it really was like, you know, what's the word? Like a sort of through the wardrobe moment, if that's even a saying, where you
Yeah.
sort of step into that world, you start learning about other things, how they, you know, connect with everything. And so I think it's been almost like a bit of not an obsession, but it's almost something I'm sort of very close to ever since, you know, that point in time.
Yes.
And obviously when I got involved, it was an interesting time in the cycle. You know, it was, I think it was late summer 2019, which I think put from a, you know, from a Bitcoin sort of halving perspective, you know, in terms of the cycle, it looked like it was kind of just sort of flat lining. It looked like it, you know, it looked like it had a terrible
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
terrible bear market that had just, you know, crashed it, probably flushed loads of, yeah, everyone out and gave everyone a really bad experience. And it just sort of looked then that it had kind of done all of that, and it was just then, you know, going to be ticking along for a bit with a very, very slight uptrend. And I sort of looked at it, I thought, I wonder if this is going to be something that's worth, you know, being involved in or investing in. But as much as anything, it's yeah, it's an interest, you know,
Yeah.
rather than a sort of just an investment, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. You know, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I totally understand the through the wardrobe moment, because I think that's true for most people of our generation, and I sort of agree with you with the younger people. Um, Although I'm not in an environment, you know, I have nephews and nieces, and they know about it, but they're not really involved with it. And vast majority of people that I interact with are sort of disbelievers, as it were, that they're not really interested. They're too busy working, they're too busy paying their bills and what have you to really research it. But I do think you hit that tipping point, where you're sort of learning about it and not quite comprehending it, and especially me not coming from a technical background, I was just sort of looking at it going, what is this thing, you know, and trying to understand it from a technical and a scientific point of view. And so I went on a much longer learning curve with it and met a lot of people that sort of went, oh, just get yourself a wallet, buy some, you'll love it, you know. And I didn't understand the whole get a wallet. You know, I'm like thinking, what, I've got to get a leather wallet, especially to put it in. And, you know, they're talking about
yeah.
coins and tokens and what have you. And I was, ugh. So it took me about a
When,
year to
when was that?
actually.
When was that? Sorry to interrupt you there, but interrupt your flow. But when was that for you then? When was that going on?
Core. Well, I first heard about Bitcoin way back when, because I was working in the alternative monetary industry. I was a co-partner in a barter company out in America, and so we sort of had an alternative bank. So I was already in that realm and met lots of people who went, "Oh man, if you're doing that, you should get into Bitcoin." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. I'm too busy." I mean, I wish I had, looking back on it, because it was about $9 at that point. That was really early on, and I, you know, sort of knew about it, but wasn't really interested. I had all my own stuff, and you know, I was working ridiculous hours. And it was only when I came back to the UK, which was 2014, and I bumped into a few people, and they were big into Ethereum. And they went, "Oh, get yourself some Ethereum. It's really cheap. I haven't got a clue how it works, but I've got a techie mate that goes, trust me, buy some, sit on it. 10 years' time, you'll thank me," you know. And then I met another guy who's my Japanese artist friend up in London. And he went, "Oh my God, look, you know, I don't have to sell art anymore. I've got all this crypto and what have you. Get yourself a wallet and buy some and buy this and buy that." And I'm thinking, okay, it all sounds brilliant, but what's a wallet? How do I get one? How do I buy it? How do I move my money from my bank to this wallet thing? And it was just too complicated. So I just let it sit. And it wasn't until the lockdown. So, I mean, I got in after you, um, and never poo-pooed it, never went, like Michael Saylor, everyone laughs at him because he went, oh, Bitcoin, load of rubbish. And now he's the biggest investor. I never sort of poo-pooed it. It was always, I'll get to that, but I'm busy and I don't understand it. And then I sort of put in 1,000 hours just watching lots of YouTube videos and just gaining as much knowledge, and went, now I get how to set up a wallet. And then pretty much did it a bit like you, that I set up a wallet, put some money in, didn't fully trust that, okay, is my money, who is this company? Is it going to be safe there? But I bought some stuff, and I was more into gold and silver investing, being more of a traditional investor because my dad was in finance, and very risk averse as you would be in the banking world, then got more and more into it. As the more I learned, the more I felt comfortable. And then I found out, you mentioned HBAR. That was one that I got in quite early. And Cardano. I started watching a lot of Charles Hoskinson's because I looked at the roots of crypto and Bitcoin and the team that worked on it, and then shifted to Ethereum. And Charles just stood out. It's like, bloody hell, this bloke, he knows his stuff. He's talking lots and lots of sense, and looking to the future. That was the thing. He was doing all of the scientific and academic part and going, right. And this is why I'm super excited about ADA, because I think they've sort of been the gingerhead like cousin in the back room, and everyone's just gone, and now, a lot of the other tokens are like going, oh, bugger, I wish we'd thought of that. And they're having trouble playing catch up.
Yeah, because I remember with Cardano, there was going to be obviously phases of, implementation. And they had all of the they had names, didn't they? I don't know if they were philosophers or what they were, but they were, like Voltaire or whatever.
He does like his like historical references. Yeah.
It wasn't Voltaire, was it? But it was these different phases, and you think, oh, this seems so slow, but it has. I think it has delivered all of those phases, hasn't it? Now, I think.
Yes, and all heading towards decentralization. That was always the goal of it, but it's very tricky. I mean, I watched a new interview with Charles, I think like just last week, and he was chatting to a Japanese interviewer, and he was saying, we thought that the academic part was going to be the difficult bit and the technical bit was going to be the easy bit, but it turned out it was the other way round. Writing academic papers, and the academic community went, this is absolutely brilliant, and started churning out papers. And then they discovered the actual technical side and the application of what they wanted to do was really, really difficult, because they were overlapping lots of different programming languages, trying to interface with other tokens, and the whole building bridges and onboarding and offboarding and smart contracts. They just went, holy crap, we can hit 90%. Oops, I hate bloody reminders. That whole technical element was the bit that they wish they'd thrown way more resources into from the get-go. But now things are starting to come together, which is really good.
Yeah, I mean, certainly with like Cardano, I mean, you can really see it having a place in, certain areas. I mean, like for example, voting, for the elections and things like that. In the US, where you have, people talk about sort of voting scandals, for an election, and you can imagine there being systems running on Cardano that really are from the normal traditional world, that don't necessarily include things like payments, which you most expect, but actual systems that are trusted. You can really imagine having a place in the future, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, the real world application for it. A lot of people that haven't done the research and aren't in there, they haven't gone into Narnia as we have. just sort of go, oh, it's especially on the meme coin side of things, which again is a completely different circus that we could get into later if we can be bothered. But a lot of people don't realise, number one, that a lot of blockchain technology is already out there and being used. Still tip of the iceberg stuff, but they don't see the real world application of it for things like smart contracts, for anti-fraud. That was one of the bits that really pulled me into Cardano, was they were talking about, because they're quite big in Asia and Africa, and some of the big problems in places like Nigeria and the like is academic fraud. So people will get a fake degree, and they're not even qualified at all, and there's no way of verifying it because it all looks good. It's a real good forgery. But he said, well, with blockchain, now we can actually verify that they are actually a PhD in neuroscience or whatever. And there's no way of disputing it. It is fraud. And I thought, cool. And then, like you said, with voting, that was where my brain first went, this is brilliant. This gets us to have digital IDs that are safe and secure, that all of my info can be on the blockchain. But if you want to verify my age, whether I'm eligible to vote, you have only access to that bit of my information and nothing more. Unlike having your medical records that everyone can see. Well, hey, hang on, or a business. I've got all of my information of my business here, but there's a lot of it. I'm not talking about my business is big enough. But say someone like IBM, all of their internal information about their staff and their projections and their plans can be there that's shareable internally. Their proper turnover and what have you. But then everything that's public can be publicly available, but still be secure. And I find that absolutely brilliant, because I hate corruption and all of the fraud and nonsense that goes on. And I really see super things happening over the next 5 to 10 years, especially with AI and robotics. And I mean, past 2030, I cannot even comprehend what the world really looks like.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Because we are, from a cycle perspective, this does seem to be heading towards. So if you go through the cycles that obviously there was a 2011. I think that's right. 2017, 2021. 2025, and the sort of top or bottom of the cycle is very much on, obviously people are talking about price appreciation or depreciation, and there's always this, is there ever going to be a mass adoption sort of cycle where things actually start being used by the traditional world? And this does seem to be now heading very close to that. Now you can really, and no matter, politically, people might have different thoughts about, say, for example, the President of the United States and what have you, but you can imagine an administration like that actually saying, okay, if this benefits us, we'll use it. And for that reason, it feels like it is exciting, because some of these projects have such an enormous capacity to improve things.
Yes.
And so this is really, I think, what it's about, isn't it? It's like holding a piece of the future.
Anyone that's interested, and probably like yourself, whenever you come across someone that's interested, it's just like, right, let me tell, like you sort of evangelize a little bit about it. And I compare it very much to the .com era of the 90s. And if you actually track the trajectory of that and how people were like, oh, internet, no one's going, that's not useful. I chat to people face to face. I don't want to use this computer nonsense. Email, what on earth's that? And then you look today, or even during the early 2000s, and I was a very early adopter just because of what I was doing. I was in the computer business, more sales. I actually worked for an IBM VAR, so you'll know what a VAR is. I'm sure most people sort of go, what the hell's that? But I won't bore the audience. So, I was already into the internet and all of that stuff. And just watching how, we sort of went from that, where people were like, it's nonsense, it will never catch on. PC, what's that? To, holy crap, if you're a business and you're not a .com, you know, they had lots of businesses making websites for people changing their names, blah, 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 blah. And now, you know, if you chatted to a business, you know, or go out on the street and sort of said, you know, if you've got an email address, they'll go, oh God, yeah, I've got one for this, I've got one for that, one for work, one for personal, I'm on social media, blah, 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 blah. And I see us still as very early adopters. I mean, we're very early to the party. You know, I tell people that are in like we are, until you actually get 9 out of 10 people coming to you telling you about crypto, we still haven't hit the tip of the iceberg. You know, we really are early, and most people don't really get it until after the fact. I mean, we're still, you know, the bell curve thing, you know, for early adopters, we're still on the top end, in my opinion. But things like Trump and, you know, things like El Salvador and Belize and Argentina and other countries that are really onboarding this whole cryptography and blockchain is exciting. And I do feel something simmering. And I think it is only a case of about the next 5, you know, within the next 5 years, we are going to see really huge strides forward with other people adopting it. And the bit that the industry hasn't quite nailed is actually making purchases. You know, I don't think Bitcoin will ever be used for making purchases, just because it has become more of a digital gold and store of value. But things like Cardano and you know, other tokens that are out there being used for you and I to make everyday payments. You know, as soon as you can pay your electricity bill using crypto as seamlessly as using your bank card, then I think you'll just suddenly see this whoosh, and it'll all be happening behind the scenes. That's what they're working on. It's just not as easy as possible. You know, I mean, you've already got companies like Chainlink and HBAR working with the current financial mechanisms, and it's good to see them with, you know, BlackRock, you know, really forging out there, because they know if they don't get involved with the technology, they're going to be out of business. You know, and the banks love making money.
Yeah. I mean, the sort of practical application of the you know, the projects themselves. I mean, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think companies are going to be able to see how they can, you know, transact more efficiently. They can, you know, they can sort of reduce their operating costs, data center costs. You know, there's so much, you know, good reason for them to get on board. And I think obviously there needs to be some sort of green lighting of things, you know, in terms of from a sort of regulatory perspective. So I suppose give the confidence to, because you've got sort of someone like Michael Saylor, who's kind of like a bit of an individual who's done a lot with one company in terms of a balance sheet. But, you know, I suppose most people in other CEOs and other companies would see him as someone who's quite outlandish for doing that, and, you know, almost a bit crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's going to come a time when people think, actually, you know what, if our company used this, we could, you know, be more, you know, effective or efficient, and so on. So, and obviously one of the obvious sort of projects is obviously, you know, Ripple with XRP. I mean, that's you know, been through, you know, lawsuits and so on, and seems to be kind of coming out the other side. And you know, that's not the first sort of, you know, if you go through the history of some companies, they've had lawsuits and almost come out regulated as a result, even though it was a negative going in. So you really can see that, you know, at some point there will be this, you know, adoption phase that it seems that we're getting closer to.
Yes, and I think as well, talking a little bit more about traditional finance and the fiat monetary system. You know, that's why I got really excited being part of the barter bank system, was that you know, I could see back then that, you know, we were headed towards a cliff, and this was before 2008, so the big crash that happened, and we did really well out of that. But the whole monetary system that we've got, nationally and globally, is, for want of a better word, a ginormous Ponzi scheme, which is why things are actually going up in value, and youngsters can't actually get on the property ladder because the actual value of pounds and dollars is just disintegrating. Whereas something like Bitcoin, because it's only limited to 21 million tokens, is built-in deflationary. So it will always, what they say, everything compared to Bitcoin goes to zero, which is what will happen. Because if you actually, I'll try not to get too technical here, but once you factor in inflation into your pricing algorithm for creating a chart, you'll actually see that everything is really just treading water, whether it's the stock market, whether it's house prices or what have you. They're not actually going up in value. They're just keeping step with inflation. But then you look at things that are inflation resistant, like Bitcoin. Even if you look at gold hasn't really increased in value. It's actually held its value over time. If you sort of look at what an ounce of gold would buy you, and then compare that to real world things, I can't remember what a loaf of bread cost back in the 70s, or a pint of milk. But if you do that kind of thing, and they completely fudge it, because you look, if you look at the FTSE and the S&P 500, what happens is if the companies don't perform, they get kicked out, and they bring better performing ones in to the analysis. If you look at the original companies, because Kodak used to be on the S&P 500, well, they're no longer in business, but they were right up there. They change it, and the same with inflation. They'll take out products that aren't doing well or are doing well to actually fudge this. It's a scam, and I think that is going to help everything to do with crypto and Bitcoin. Which is why I'm excited, and I just take a long-term view with it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? Coming back to sort of individual, why are you doing it, and why is it interesting to you? And I think it is the opportunity to sort of try to be owning a bit of the future.
Mm-hmm.
When you invest, you obviously believe that you think that this is, unless you're just, like you mentioned earlier, buying a meme coin or something. I think you are sort of thinking this is something where the future's going, and it does make you think. Are people that are likely to buy it? We're not really. We would probably not think that we're early. Even because obviously there's people that were really early.
Yes.
But like you say, we're early, and anyone who kind of comes into the area is early still massively. But the people that are early, they might be more predisposed to it because of a certain set of things about themselves and their background. So, for example, are they going to be someone who's had a little bit of a technical background? Are they going to be somebody who, is interested in finance or history, or, certain things might make someone be more inclined to, like now, be involved than somebody else. And so I mean, because you can talk to, like I say, a financial advisor who's like a proper financial advisor in the UK, and you can have a sort of conversation with them. Now, what they do in their personal affairs in terms of what they might purchase, obviously, you'll never know. But if you speak to them about crypto, they'd be like, "Oh no, we don't get involved in that."
Yeah.
because it's not regulated products, and they don't want to talk about that to their clients. But so it's just interesting, what an individual might do from what background. You could talk to some people and it would be completely, but then maybe there's a moment where people kind of switch to it as a result of certain things happening.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a light bulb moment, isn't there? I mean, it's education really is going from not knowing, to doing some research, to getting more interest, and then taking that tiny step. And again, this isn't financial advice for anyone that's watching. You know, we're not financial advisors, we're not regulated. This is just us chatting about a fantastic hobby that happens to gain in value. Going back to your point about early days, that, you know, us being early adopters or not, I'm actually quite glad that I got in. I mean, okay, I wish I got in before lockdown, because that was a much better time, even though it was turbulent. I kind of got in when all the lunar thing was happening, and the Sam Bankman-Fried thing, and it was like,
oh god, yeah, that was rough, wasn't it?
Thankfully I didn't put too much into lunar, but loads of people were goading me on and going, oh, do jump on board, you know. But I think you kind of have to have those crap moments to go, oh, okay, let's pull back. Let's not listen to the hype. Let's build a theory. What's my strategy? Yep, this is what I believe in. Okay, I've got my 10-year plan. Boom. And just sort of close your ears and just go, oh, not listening to all that crap. And it's one of the reasons why I'm glad I didn't get in. Number one, I wasn't technically proficient. But, I mean, you know, the Mount Gotts incident, and, you know, the poor bloke that threw his hard drive in the dump, and with the, you know, I don't know, 20,000 Bitcoin on it or something. I mean, it's worth billions, and he can't bloody find it. That would drive me absolutely crazy. You know.
Yeah, I mean, occasionally you'll run into somebody who, I mean, I know of somebody who, yeah, has told me about somebody else who, you know, had you know, like 20 Bitcoin. You know, just kind of got rid of them when they were, you know, $5 or something. You know? And I you know, I don't know that it was $5, but it was 20 Bitcoin, and you think, wow, you know, imagine, you know, if they'd have held it. But yeah, back in the day, I mean, I think this sometimes does come back to someone's actual exposure to the technology and the project to understand what it's trying to do. Because there's always these little sort of scams, you know, and where you'll sort of see someone, like an advert, you know, where it said, you know, someone told me about this thing, and blah, blah, blah. It's almost like a sort of scammy advert about something as a front, some kind of platform. You know, and I think obviously it's a lot of, you know, corrupt bodies, you know, and you know, that try and so obviously when someone gets closer to it themselves and the technology, you know, then they're more likely to kind of understand, you know, and hold on to it. But there's a lot really at play, isn't there, when you're thinking about it? I mean, a lot of people are kind of like a little bit disenchanted with things like governments and things like that, and so a lot of some of the people have been kind of the decentralized in nature of something like Bitcoin appeals to people, and you know, and sort of not having a government that can control their money. You know, these sort of things do appeal, and I think obviously then you have sort of hardcore Bitcoin maxis who sort of think that could kind of like sort of just literally just sort of take over all of the financial systems of the world, which kind of seems very far-fetched. You know, and so, you know, some of these, it's more, you know, how do these projects kind of complement? That's what's kind of interesting, isn't it? Certainly to me, is how do these projects kind of help what we've got and make it better? And but yeah, it's certainly 2019 is when I kind of got in, and here we are, and it's 6 years later. It's like a blur.
I mean, see, I've sort of fallen into both camps of sort of financial. You know, I'm in it because this is part of my retirement, you know, pension pot, what have you, and it's slow and steady wins the race on that one. But also, like you, I'm excited about technologically and socially how it can help people, and I'm toying with the idea with my Zentrifuge project, where I'm using AI currently to code this mental health chatbot app, which thankfully, I've ironed out a lot of the bugs on that one. I'll chat to you about that later. But one of my sort of unique selling points of it, I think, goes back to something someone told me ages ago to do with crypto. And sort of imagine if Facebook said, if you sign up and become part of our social network, you'll actually own a stake in Facebook and financially benefit from it. How wealthy would people be building that to 1 billion plus users, and how egalitarian would it be for us all to benefit from this new technology, which hopefully I see the world going in that direction, fingers crossed. Because otherwise I don't see how we're going to avoid having some kind of global cartel of all of these tech giants just running everything, and we're just plebs living out a sort of robotic life. So I'm sort of toying with the idea of creating Zentrifuge as a DAO, as a decentralized company, where people are well, they're incentivized by tokens to interact on the platform and benefit from it. I've sort of reached that point where I don't want to be a billionaire. You know what I mean? I'd rather have that self-satisfaction of knowing I've done something really, really good and impactful for the world. That makes sense. I'm not trying to say I'm a saint or whatever. And I would like to make money myself out of it. But I think there's sort of a cap where you go, when is enough enough? And I met way too many people in America that had the big mansion, they had the boat, they had the country home, they had, multiple millions, 20, 30 million in the 401k pension pot, but they were still after more and more and more. And I went, guys, when's enough enough? And almost all of them went, well, the neighbors just bought a big boat, and they never used this shit. You know what I mean? They had four-wheelers, they had like Harley Davidsons, big boats, crap like that. But no quality of life, no freedom, no, they were completely trapped. And you just think, flipping out, these people were older than me back then. They were sort of older than I am now. So they were sort of 60s. And it's like, F&L, time out, Charlie, spend it, enjoy your life while you still can. And so that's sort of where I'm at, is that, like, I won't sort of divulge sort of what the ceilings are and what have you, but once it's bringing in an income on a regular basis, well, just share it out with everybody else and just have it as this self-fulfilling, centrifugal, system. So that's my sort of theory on where this technology hopefully can go, that we'll all be benefiting from the technology rather than a small group of people raking it all in, including governments, that it'll actually be more of a level playing field. But
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think, the thing is that there's no doubt about it that sort of we seem to be heading towards a sort of tokenized world, don't we? And so, and when you go through the different processes of life, whether you're kind of buying a house or whatever it is, some of those processes are so archaic and time consuming, and you're waiting for people to do the next step, which takes weeks, and you sort of think, and then someone's posted something to someone, and it's taken a week and a half for them to open it, and and you think, well, why have we got those systems for so long? That we have to. Why does it take 3 months to buy a house or whatever it is? That's probably good now. It's probably better, but yeah, there's so much opportunity, and people talk about tokenizing even the stock market, tokenizing sort of forex and indices and what have you. So it's very. It does seem that we're at a sort of certain point in history where things are going to change for the better, hopefully, using the technology.
I think so. And it's been a long time coming, because I mean, like myself, I'm sure you remember the whole paperless office and that what I would call the first wave of technology of like, I remember watching things like Tomorrow's World where they go, oh, in the future, we will all, have a life of luxury and lounge around by the swimming pool and be served by robots. We won't have to work so hard and this, that, and the other. And the contrary happened. Technology made people work faster and harder and do more with less time and totally stressed the crap out of people. But coming back to your point about technology making things easier and buying a house, because my friend Daryl's just gone through it. They finally completed after about 6 months, and it's different people dragging their feet. And just things like conveyancing. Well, there's your house. All the crap that was right or wrong with it 20 years ago will still be the same. So, the deed searches and covenants and this, that, and the other, that can all be stored on blockchain. So all you need to do is just see what has changed. So you're shrinking it right the way down. And the whole thing, do you own the property or not? Well, yes, you do, because here it is. It's validated on the blockchain. It doesn't have to take 6 weeks to do something like that. And there are many, many things, like the paintings in the background there. Well, if they're original paintings, how do you know? Okay, you may have a piece of paper to say it's an original, but is the piece of paper a forgery? Simple things like that. People go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So yeah, I'm excited about the practical applications of all of this. It is exciting.
Me too, definitely. I mean, that comes down to sort of almost like a conviction of some of the projects and what have you. And I'm always really impressed by some people who will just have conviction about certain use cases, and and they kind of hold the line on that's what I think something's going to become, and that's where I see it going. They don't kind of chop and change between sort of things. And and Cardano is just a brilliant example of that, because that would, by some people, especially people who are kind of trying to be cool or what have you, that would have been seen as sort of almost like a dinosaur coin. And then suddenly, just by people sort of with conviction, it's probably going to do something quite amazing.
I see exciting things just because they're so in step with Bitcoin, and that was their, if you sort of study the history of it all from Bitcoin and why the people that were involved in Bitcoin flipped to Ethereum, because they went, well, we want Bitcoin to do XYZ. Gosh, it can't do it. It's too clunky and ploddy. Okay, rather than bang our heads against the wall, let's create a new Bitcoin, and we call it Ethereum, and it's going to do this and this and this and this and this. And I think there was about 17 of them originally involved with that, and they all went, yeah, but let's pull it in this direction, and then let's pull it in this direction. Well, we want it to do that, and it would be good. And because of them not having a cohesive vision, it was just Vitalik that got left with it. And all the others split off and started Polygon and Cardano and Aptos and who knows what else. There were all these spin-offs that came from it. And out of all of them, this is where Charles Hoskinson, for me, just totally up there. It's like, wow.
Definitely.
He's,
and
I
think when you think about it, because I mean, one of the most exciting things that's sort of happened, I think, recently is where Trump has, had that kind of crypto meeting. I don't know what, I've forgotten the name of it now, but he basically, there's a new SEC chair, and there's obviously, there's a, I don't know, what's his name? David, is it David Sachs, who's the, he calls him his crypto and AR.
Crypto czar. Yeah.
So, and they had that meeting in that room, and you had Sergey Nazarov from Chainlink was in there, with the president.
All the big guns were there in the Oval Office.
And obviously you had Brad Garlinghouse was there for Ripple. You had Michael Saylor. You had the Winklevoss guys in there.
Yeah.
So this is really kind of happening, isn't it? I mean, it's like
Yeah. I mean, anybody that's sat on the fence, and again, this isn't financial advice. We're not trying to shill anybody or strong arm anybody. Do your research, but if you are interested, do your research. Find a good wallet. We're not going to make any recommendations. Wallet is basically like a brokerage, but for crypto. So if you buy stocks and shares, it's similar to that. And just put a little bit of money in and buy some Bitcoin, and just forget about it and do some research. Don't worry about it going up and down. This is, I think, Mark, this is what scares a lot of people off, is they see these huge ups and downs that you'll have, a 40% retraction, and then you'll have a 20% gain. And then for months and months and months, like last summer, it's just flat. Tiny little ups and downs. Boring. But investing is boring. This is what a lot of people.
Obviously, how dollar cost averaging, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can remember back in the day, someone I know had kind of come into some money, and they were very, very, very traditional in their approach. But somebody at just a local building society bank kind of said, you'd be quite wise to do a stocks and shares ISA, and so they, went and bought the full amount. In one go.
Yeah.
And of course, then it went down and massively freaked out when I took the money out. And so it's the same, isn't it? Like it's going to, if it's going to go up and down, dollar cost averaging, and sort of ride it out.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was starting to get into Bitcoin, there was, because YouTube is a fantastic resource for being able to look at what you're interested in.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a guy on there who, and I think his name is Satoshi Stacker or something like that, but he had done this video. It looks a bit old now, but he lays out a case. And when he did this video, I came across it when I think Bitcoin was about $3,000 at the time,
right?
And it said it basically says, I think if you search for it, it says Bitcoin to 10 million,
right?
That's all you need to search, and you'll probably find it. And it's a very good video because it talks about the history, and there's different people talking, and and he lays out the case. It talks about sort of economics and history and so on. And of course, when I watched that seemed utterly ridiculous that Bitcoin reached 10 million. What an idiot! What an idiot! And now you look at it and you think, well, it's
it's plausible. It is plausible. And again, I think the whole industry has gained so much more plausibility that pre-regulation, even going back a couple of years, it's like you sort of mentioned, different lawsuits and things like that, the SEC attacking the industry and what have you. For a traditional investor, it was like, what if they make it illegal? I'm going to lose everything, etc., etc., etc. But they're not understanding the true underlying philosophy of self-custody. That if you've got your hard wallet with all your crypto on, well, you can just walk across a border or fly from the UK to another country. And if you were trying to take gold with you, or again, this will be a classic. How difficult has it been for you in the past to get your traditional bank to send money to your crypto brokerage? That's been like pulling teeth. I mean, I only wanted to transfer about £1,000. And automatically it flagged it and went, this is a scam, blah, 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 phone our fraud department. And I had to explain to them. I said, look, I've been in the financial industry for almost 40 years. I know exactly what I'm doing. Go ahead and tell me your blah, blah, blah script that you've got to run. No, I'm not going to, if I lose all my money, I'm not going to try and sue you, blah, blah, blah. Just release my effing money. And let me do what I want to do. Yeah.
Some processes are going to seem ridiculous. It's a bit like when someone from an older generation tells you about how they used to do something, and it seems laughable. I mean, the idea of You know, I always think about this. You know, when you go to the airport and you change some currency, you know, you buy your you buy your whatever it is for the country you're going to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, you know, sort of certain, you know, this environment is going to make things like that seem ridiculous pretty soon.
Yeah.
People, why would you do that? You know, it's yeah. So I mean, but coming on to self custody, what you were saying, you know, and obviously, you know, one of the sort of phrases people use, you know, not your keys, not your crypto, which is obviously relating to, you know, your seed phrase and your, you know, your security for your crypto. I mean, I think some people will always, there will always be people that don't want to do that. You know, and I suppose the hope is that, you know, in the future there are, you know, sort of institutions that people have confidence in that kind of bridge that gap to people who want to, you know, hold, and hopefully they'll get a return on it as well. Because that would be a very, you know, you know, so you sort of see that coming, don't you, as well? In the not too distant future.
Well, like we were saying, I mean, I'm kind of conscious of the time because we've passed that hour, but
have we really?
Yeah, I know. This is the thing. I mean, we'll have to have another chat, but I think probably that's a good time to wrap this episode up because we've we've covered generally a lot of things, but it would be great to have you back on, and again we'll carry on chatting for a little bit if you've got time after we go off air. But anything else you want to sort of say in closing on this, or?
No, not really. I mean, thanks for having me on. I mean, yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think you just wanted to ask me about how I got involved, and I think we've gone off all over the place.
Yeah, no, but it's been brilliant. It's sort of what I was actually hoping for, that it was this sort of general thing, because, you know, again, not financial advice. We're not trying to evangelize people. Well, yeah, we are. No. I'm trying to spread the word about what this is, to be totally honest, because I think it's effing cool. And yeah, no, I think we sort of covered, you know, a whole lot of elements. And I said I'll have you back on, and we'll sort of see what the subscribers think. They may go, "Cool, blimey, can you talk about, you know, XYZ next time?" So if you're up for that,
certain projects or something, you know, and it's certainly an environment where everyone's learning, aren't they? All of the time. I mean, it's just so
it's exciting. It's exciting. I mean, you know, this might be a good closing point, because in my life I've met a lot of people who go, "Oh gosh, I'd have loved to have lived through the Tudor era," or "God, wouldn't it have been great to be around when the Romans were around," or what have you. And for most of my life, just because so many crazy exciting things have actually happened in the world, mostly to do with technology, I am so thankful that I have lived the life I've lived at the time I've lived it, because it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, because some of the jobs I was doing, you know, in the background of, you know, whatever it was, you know, in the sort of technology roles. And you think, oh, you know, why didn't I invest? I mean, it was just crazy that you were doing.
Don't we all?
You were doing all of those roles, using all of those platforms and products, and yet you didn't invest in anything. But this is much bigger than that, because this is like almost like a, you know, someone's called it like, you know, the fourth industrial revolution, isn't it? Because it's a huge change. It's not a, you know, shift to a different platform. It's a change that's ahead of us.
This really is it's a social civilization movement. I mean, one of the best analogies is you know, people are talking about national grid at the moment, and how they've got to change the infrastructure to actually fit in with all of this eco generate, you know, solar and wind and what have you, which is the major problem. They can't get it from the wind farms to the houses easy enough, so they have to fire up the old generators and things like that. And broadband, you know, all the telephone lines, BT put that in place and they own it. You know, this blockchain and crypto, this technology is something that we, the people, can have a part of. And I think that's the exciting bit, is that it doesn't matter if you're using your mobile phone in the middle of Africa somewhere, or you're in Vietnam, or you're in South America, or you're in Washington, DC, or you're in London, we all have the freedom and the opportunity to buy into this technology and be a stakeholder in something which is going to be the underlying rails and the pipeline, if you like, or the network of all of this technology that's going to be layered on top. And I think that's what's really exciting, is that rather than Facebook and Amazon and all of these big, huge companies making all of the wealth and keeping it all, everybody gets the chance to be a stakeholder in the future of civilization. That's really, really exciting. And before we go totally down that rabbit hole, we'll sort of call it quits for today, and we'll just have a little chat afterwards if you've still got time.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be on. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I mean, as I think people have noticed, we could probably just chat on all day about this. So, all right, we'll call that quits for now, and I'll catch you on the flip side.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Ant. Take care.